Well, Greta certainly seems to have stirred up a hornet's nest. Yesterday, I heard comments about Greta Thunberg's address at the United Nations, such as an emotional breakdown from someone who is unstable. I even heard someone describe her as a communist. Well, isn't she just stating things more or less as they are? She's speaking for an entire generation that has been betrayed and done in, sorry, I can't find the word at the moment. How can they be anything but emotional and angry? So let's just hear what she said in her own words, if you've not already heard this yourself.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you are doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions and chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years. There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable, and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not. Thank you.
So the right-wing denialists have been saying that she's speaking for globalists like Macron, Merkel, etc. But from hearing what she had to say, it didn't sound like it to me. but no doubt people will hear what they want to hear. So it turns out that Macron and some of the globalists really didn't like her message at all. Let's just have a look at a few of the headlines. So this came from news.com.au this morning. Climate Action Summit. Greta Thunberg responds to Donald Trump's jab. The US president took aim at activist Greta Thunberg as she ripped into leaders about climate change, but the teen had the perfect response. And I'll post it below so that you can see what that response was. But this is the response from Emmanuel Macron, who goes on and on about climate change, usually to suit his own political agenda, of course. Greta Thunberg is likely to antagonize societies, Emmanuel Macron warns, after the climate campaigner files lawsuit against France for producing high quantities of greenhouse gases. Greta Thunberg, 16, addressed world leaders at the Climate Action Summit 2019. She's filed a lawsuit accusing 5 countries of not taking climate change action, including France. And Emmanuel Macron said the decision was radical and would antagonize societies. Whereas the Zero Hedge, which of course is climate change denier, says Macron slams Greta Thunberg after teenage activist sues France over climate but leaves out China. French President Emmanuel Macron slammed Greta Thunberg after the 16-year-old climate activist filed a legal complaint accusing 5 countries of inaction on global warming in violation of the 30-year-old UN Convention on the Rights of a Child. Germany, France, Brazil, Argentina and Turkey. But then they go on to say, notably, she left out China, which is the world's worst polluter by total volume. Good morning to everyone except China for being the biggest polluter in the world, yet somehow escaping the wrath of Greta Thunberg. Well, she is 16. I don't know who wrote her speech. And, oh yeah, this is just, sorry, these are all out of sync. This just appeared on Radio New Zealand. Tim Flannery, who's been an absolute disappointment to me as a spokesman on climate change in Australia. He gave an interview on Radio New Zealand, and he said 20 years in climate activism, a colossal failure. No climate warning or report, no political agreement, nor technological innovation has altered the ever upward trajectory of the pollution. A simple fact forces me to look back on my 20 years of social activism as a colossal failure. Tim Flannery in The Conversation on the 17th of September. Australian scientist, writer and environmental activist Tim Flannery is fed up with the disconnect between the politicians' words and the reality of increasing greenhouse gases emissions. He tells Kim Hill, it's time to face the reality of the situation. We've inflicted so much damage, the consequences are inevitable. Because I look at things in a completely different way, and I'll be making my thoughts clear on this in due course. And here goes more. Mass hysteria. German lawmakers warn Greta Thunberg's climate activism threatens rational debate. So that's not from the left, it's from the right, of course. While her performance at the UN received accolades from Germany's left-wing parties, conservative lawmakers raised alarm over Thunberg's incendiary approach. MP Roderick Kiesewetter, a member of the Christian Democratic Union, said Thunberg was attempting to bully those. 16-year-olds trying to bully those who seek respectful, fact-based dialogue about environmental issues. Anyone who wants to argue rationally is already discredited from the outset, he said, adding that objectivity was being thrown out the window. It never existed in the first place. And here we are again. Radical Greta Thunberg antagonizes our society, as Macron says after her UN speech. French President Emmanuel Macron did not hide his frustration with Greta Thunberg's furious attack on world leaders, himself included, very justified, at the UN, displaying a change of heart since hosting her last year. The environmental activists had a productive day at the UN on Monday, berating the delegates for betraying young people through their inaction in tackling the climate crisis. She also added a legal complaint to her itinerary pressuring 5 countries, including France, to get back on track with the emissions goals they decided on at the 2015 Paris Agreement. Yeah, so little Macron has changed his mind about Greta, has he? Now this was sort of interesting. This is an article, Greta Thunberg, an itinerary of a spoilt child, and yeah, there's a certain truth to this because it cites an opinion of someone, I think, well, from Africa, and I can't imagine any child from Africa having exactly the same sort of messages as her. So all of this is replete with contradiction and irony. I have lots of thoughts about this right now, contradicting narratives. I'm working on a project at the moment. When I've finished with that, I shall be turning my attention to getting my thoughts together and presenting them to it feels like the right time for sorting out my thoughts and feelings about things. This is Seymour Rocks reporting from down under.